We're live. Okay.
I got it up there. What's that?
Okay. So I'm calling the meeting, the school building committee meeting to order January 23rd at 6:04. So we will open the meeting with a roll call. Brian Mahoney.
Here.
Brian Sylvia.
Here.
Dave Palizzetti.
Here.
Kate Massante's here. Luke Murray.
Here.
Bob Littlefield.
Here.
Terry Lynch.
Here.
Jim Manny.
Here.
Michael Pedraza.
Here.
And here with us, we have our folks from Left Field and Studio Jade. And public correspondence. I don't recall receiving any public correspondence that was for public consumption. So I will leave it at that. Okay, all right. So we will move on to new business item number 3, discussion action. Update following the town council meeting regarding use of PAYGO funds for advanced reimbursement around value engineering and finalization of schematic design. Our update is that they approved it. They approved our request. And does anybody have any other comments they want to make on that agenda item? It's pretty simple and straightforward. They approved it, and now we can proceed through the next phase of where we are.
Was it a full approval, or did they have a dollar value, or?
Up to $2.5 million.
Thank you.
Yep. No discussion on that? Awesome. Nope. Okay, so new business item number 4, discussion action, updates to any further value engineering for cost reduction for new South Kingstown High School design. I'm under the assumption that we do not have any updates on this. There's no further design that is ready to come in front of us at this point. The only thing I guess I'm going to ask is kind of a next step and/or when might we see some further value engineering?
I think this is on now. Yes. So the next steps regarding value engineering, they'll be evaluated as we move through design development. All of the items that were accepted will either be further studied or implemented into the design development documents. From a constructability lens, we have tasked SLAM and Studio Jade with ensuring their designs are fitting within the budget. So as they move into design development, that's the lens in which they'll be designing. But the next formal value engineering exercise will happen at the end of design development. We'll get our next estimate from Gilbane and our third-party estimator, and then we'll see where we stand with the budget to see where else, if any, we need to make further reductions.
Does anybody have any questions or points of clarification at this point on that topic? No. The only question I have really is there were a couple things that were outstanding, and there were obviously things that we rejected and said, no, we're going to keep that. And so we're basically at the end of that phase looking to go into design development. So those things will be fleshed out in this next step.
Anything that was rejected will remain in the design.
Okay.
There are a few things that we're going to study that were on the list as not quite as clear-cut, things like the underground storm detention systems that we're exploring with the above-ground retention ponds, things like a possible reduction in size of the balcony. Those are things that will be explored and will be reviewed with the different various working groups throughout design development. So anything that was we need to study it and present it, that'll happen during the design development period with those user groups.
All right. Any further question, clarification? No. All right. So we'll move on to new business item number 5, discussion action, formal recommendation to town council and school committee from our body for approval of schematic design submission to RIDE in order to move on to the next step, which is design development phase of the construction process. I put a little note here that moving into design development allows for our collective team to ensure the design is functional, buildable, and estimates are accurate. Phil, would you mind coming up and kind of speaking to this? And then basically what actual verbiage should we be putting forward to town council and school committee? And then I know you shared kind of a packet with us to review that will be sent along to those bodies.
Sure. So this body will need to make a recommendation to the school committee to approve the submission to RIDE. You certainly can share the content with town council as well, but we're going to want this body's recommendation to submit and then the school committee's approval to submit. What we have created is a Google Drive where we emulated all of the sections that we have to submit to the RIDE portal for those that may be interested in seeing all the documentation. Some of it is not very impressive, but necessary. So I have shared that link with you. Additionally, I shared today a colored site plan and a couple colored floor plans of the schematic design as it was developed. Now that is a snapshot in time because we have since progressed through value engineering as well as into design development now trying to adjust the floor plans. So everyone needs to recognize that this entire submission represents a snapshot in time that RIDE will start to review and offer questions and commentary as necessary. So once we receive school committee approval, we'll go ahead and hit submit. That does not stop our work. We have progressed into design development. We have changes that we will want to talk about in the floor plans that reflect the value engineering that we've discussed already. One thing that I would like this group to consider is one of the items, for example, that we submit in the RIDE portal is called user sign-off. It's very vague. We have been successful when we have drafted a statement that select numbers of either the school building committee or town representation, the superintendent, that they go ahead and affirm some statements. So I'm just going to hand this out for your reference. At some point before we make the submission, I would like to have this document signed. It's the only document that I need signatures on. Everything else is digital. I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have.
Does anybody have any questions on this step? For myself, it's clarification of, so we are going to put it in front of the town council out of courtesy and transparency.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming will we be looking for the town council to have a stamp of approval on it? I'm hearing that we don't necessarily need the town council, but we as a body want them to see it and kind of, because their meeting comes first before the school committee anyway, so it's not like we can recommend a school committee who then pushes it to town council. We have to kind of do it in the reverse order.
And in full disclosure, some communities we work with have asked for town approval and some have not.
So the way it's been put on the agenda is,
I'll answer that. So from the beginning, we've included the town council, and that was the part of how this whole concept was sold, right? That the town council be actively engaged in all this. I think the town council should see this form, should have the opportunity to decide if they want to sign off, how they want to sign off, or whatever. But we are going to put it on for next meeting's Monday, and also I would request, I was going to talk to you later about having a representative here that can explain all this and go over the options. Okay?
Great. Luke, do you have anything else you want to add? All right. Anybody else have anything?
we do currently have it posted on our agenda for our Tuesday meeting. We were just looking to make sure, based off of the town's posting today, that there might be some language change just to make sure that things were in there. But we have till tomorrow to do that. But it is currently posted for our meeting on Tuesday, but we still have time to change the language if need be.
And to kind of concur with Jim, the only request I would have is that we have folks at the two meetings who can just kind of help if there's any sort of confusion as to what the approval means. That tends to be where I see sticking points is what are we approving? And why do we need to, what if they say no? What are the ramifications of any of these kind of checkpoints mean for the project? And then just kind of answer any clarifying questions that they may come up with. So I guess here I'm looking for, from this body, an action. So I need a motion to move forward with to move forward with a recommendation to the town council and the school committee to approve our schematic design submission to RIDE in order to move forward to the design development phase.
Good. So I'll make a motion to formally recommend to the town council and school committee the approval of schematic design submission as outlined and presented to the school building committee.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That passes. Thank you all. And we will move on to new business item 6. Discussion action. Ensure proper processes are mapped out for the channel of communication between community members and school district faculty and staff and our project team. I've put this up basically because we've had a mix of folks reach out to a mix of folks, giving their input, giving some, there's project teams at the high school that are looking at furniture selection and things of that nature. And what we've asked of our actual project team, our project managers, is to make sure that there is a formalized process, because if we're talking faculty and staff, their request should be coming through CHIP, and that should be vetted through our project management team. It shouldn't be coming to Dave Palazzetti or Brian Mahoney or Kate Massananti. It should be coming through our formal channels. And if, whichever one of you wants to kind of speak to what's that going to look like, as far as I know SLAM is reaching out to CHIP to make sure that there's an understanding there. Like when it comes to furniture and fixtures, there's a process that needs to be followed, and they can't just go and grab a catalog and be like, I want these. It's a formal process. So if one of you don't mind like speaking to what a standard process would be on this topic, that would be great.
Yes. So every community operates a little bit differently with how they want to flow communication. But I think the way that we've discussed flowing communication, there is a project website and a project email. So we would request any public correspondence go through there. It can then be filtered through the building committee and determined, who is the best to answer this. And then it'll be responded to formally and be part of the public correspondence section of the agenda on the building committee. As far as staff and faculty, as Kate mentioned, all of those correspondence should go through the principal. The principal would then contact the owner's representative, who can filter who would be the best to respond to those comments or questions. As far as processes, yes, the design team is responsible for the design of everything in the building relating to not only just the architecture, but furniture, fixtures, equipment, and technology. So that is a process that they will start during design development, where they will be designing furniture layouts, technology usage that is appropriate for the programmatic needs, the durability, the budget, everything they know within their professional expertise. to provide recommendations to this group, to the user groups and to the building committee for selection of furniture, fixtures, equipment, technology as we move forward. So that is a process that will happen during design development.
Nice and succinct. Does anybody have any questions for Kate, for myself, on this part of the process? So as she explained, if it's a member of the community, go through our website, it will filter in through our team, and then we can figure out who is the right person to touch it. If it's faculty, staff, anyone within the school district, specifically around the high school, it should be going to CHIP. I guess a curiosity question would be if it's Curtis Corner, who should it be going? Because obviously we don't have a principal of that building. So would it be Brian Mahoney, or would it be? I just want to make sure we have a clear, direct person that we point people to versus a group.
Yeah, I would say either superintendent or director of facilities and operations. That would be the appropriate person, but it's up to you guys, or Brian, it's up to you if you want to be the one to field the calls. And then, again, it would filter through us to determine who on the professional team would respond.
Yeah, that would be, I could take on the Curtis Corner.
Perfect. I just want to, basically what I would love to see halted is people reaching out to members of our OPM construction team, architecture team personally, and so that we're coming through a straight filter. So.
Okay, is that something that we should probably put on the website if questions pertaining to, right? So we can direct people to.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that. So that way it's like general project come through us, specific around Curtis Corner, it'd be Brian, and the high school would be Chip. Perfect. I like it. So that can be an action item going forward. Great. Anybody else have any comments, questions?
No, I think that's a good idea to identify the point person for the purpose of communication, as long as everybody else that is involved recognizes that as well, and then tells folks, all right, I'm not the person that you should be directing this to. I'm going to send you to Brian, or if it's somebody from the high school staff, I'm going to send you to the principal, et cetera, and everyone needs to buy into that.
Yeah, and I think it needs to be consistent messaging from anybody that receives correspondence from either a member of the public or a member of the faculty to direct them to that proper channel.
I think too, just to kind of reiterate for anybody out there, is once somebody reaches out to us through the website, it will be on our public correspondence, and we can talk about it in public here. Because again, if someone just emails me and Kate, there might be information loss that doesn't get to everybody's ears, or we will not respond, and then, so people really should be going through that SBC site and then they could come here and speak to us on it if they want to in person for further detail also.
I would also recommend any correspondence that is received through the website or through the email address be read during the public correspondence section of the agenda, just so that it is, whatever the response is or whatever the question is available to the whole community. Because there may be other people with the same question.
Perfect. Anybody else?
So with regards to content of the request, right, we've had some interested parties contact the design team requesting certain specific information about the project, or putting out things that would distract you from the design process. So how are we handling that? Like those requests come in, is that going in front of the building committee now, or is that going to Kate? Like, who's making a determination whether we're going to fulfill? I just don't want to start chasing squirrels on the project. We pay you for the project, right? Your time is not maximized when you're out chasing a request from a community member. You should be directed to do that, right? So how is that handled?
I would say if there's a directive or a request for information, we'll bring it during the OAC meeting. And if it's something that we need to elevate to the building committee, we can do so before any directive is given. I agree, any request for additional work does need to be formally requested and approved.
Does that clarify for you, Luke?
Yep.
Anybody else? Thank you for that. And that brings us now down to new business item number 7, This is a discussion around an update regarding the commissioning agent RFQ/P. Luke, you requested this.
So I'll just give a brief intro. We have managed to get it on the street. Kate can brief you on the meeting today and kind of where we're at.
Yeah, so we posted on the 17th our RFP, a request for proposals for commissioning agent. They'll be doing both MEP commissioning and envelope commissioning. It is an any chips requirement, it's a ride requirement, and it's also just good practice. So we did have our pre-bid meeting today. We had 5 different vendors that had attended, asked some really great questions. So we did draft an addendum that has all of the questions that were asked today, all of the clarifications, waiting for a few pieces of additional information from the team, and are looking to post that addendum tomorrow. The due date for this is February 7th, so we gave them a pretty quick turnaround on this, but we do think that they'll be able to fulfill the requirement for that. So after we receive proposals, we'll do a bid evaluation and provide all of the bid information required to both building committee, town council for formal approval, selection, and ultimately selecting a vendor and contracting them.
For the benefit of the public who are not aware of what a commissioning agent is, could you clarify?
So a commissioning agent is a third party. They will be doing a design review of all of our mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems, as well as our building envelope, which is the exterior of the building, making sure that everything is energy efficient, details are done correctly, that things are done within best practices for the way that those systems should be designed. So it's just a third-party check of some of the most important parts of our building. As we go into construction, they'll review submittals, making sure all of those are correct. They'll also be doing site visits, making sure things are installed correctly, and ultimately functional testing of the systems, making sure everything is functioning properly within the requirements of the owner, making sure that everything is tested and balanced correctly. And then on the envelope side, they'll be doing spray and water leakage tests to make sure that the outside of the building is nice and tight. So it's just really a third party making sure everything is done well and correctly.
Thank you. Anyone have a question on that?
Just to note, it's a ride requirement for the regulations as well. So we're required to do it. And actually, Phil's been pushing to get this to market because they do have some process as far as design development. So we've been actively moving to get this person procured, or whoever the firm is.
Anyone else? Great. Let's move on to new business item 8, discussion EMA Red Cross standards for evacuation shelters as it relates to the high school building design. Again, Luke, you requested this to be on. I do want to clarify something before we get into any more discussion on this particular topic. I know in the past our high school was the town shelter. I was under the impression it is now and has been for quite some time Broad Rock Middle School. Is that correct?
It currently is Broad Rock. The
Okay.
switch was made, I believe, a year and a half ago.
Okay. So on that topic, Luke, having this kind of as it relates to the high school building design, was there something in particular you wanted to discuss on the topic?
So Luke brought it to my attention about a month ago that, while we're in the design phase, we would need to ensure that the building that we're building could be designated as a Red Cross, under a Red Cross standard as an evacuation center, emergency center. And it was a good question. So just to give you a background, in time of an emergency, if this town underwent one for natural disasters, man-made disasters, anything, we fall under that, incident command system, which is a federal system. Most of the people in leadership have a different role at that point. Town manager becomes the director of public safety. The police chief becomes the emergency management director. The athletic director can pick up all the loose balls that are around the field in the event of a natural disaster. But all kidding aside, Terry and I go way back, so we dig each other all the time. So that was a very good question. I'm glad you brought it up, because what really is a Red Cross designation? Does it require wind speed? Does it require certain roofs? What does it require? So we contacted the Rhode Island Emergency Management Agency, spoke to the director and the assistant director, and it's a good question. I mean, most cities or towns have the high school because the largest school, as an evacuation center. But we did switch to Broad Rock, and it was a couple of years ago. And the reason was they kind of knew the high school was going to be phased out, and if it ever came down or whatever we were going to do with it, and we didn't have another facility ready, Broad Rock was the logical choice. But thinking about it and talking to the chief, a town of this size should have two, really, a primary and a secondary. If there's a large-scale natural disaster like a hurricane, that's the one that comes to mind, where you could be evacuating the South Shore, thousands of people, right? Broad Rock would easily would not have the capacity. So my recommendation to the chief was contact the Red Cross, work with EMA, and whatever guidelines we need for the new high school, let's give it to them while it's in the design phase. But once again, I don't think it's going to change much, if anything. It has to be a large building, 24-hour access, a generator, and usually it has to be off-site of where this natural disaster could be, right? So it's inland. So I think the high school is the logical choice as the primary once it's built, and then the secondary will be Broad Rock, but it's still in the working phase with the chief of police right now.
So is there a generator plan for this? I don't think there is. Okay. Not the whole building, though, just heat and lighting, elevator, life safety? Okay.
It's a pretty big generator, but it's also a pretty big school with a pretty heavy load. One of the biggest loads we have right now is ventilation. It's a requirement for the building ventilation to be on a generator. That is part of life safety. So it is life safety, but that does encompass a lot. And it also does include the kitchen. So we do have refrigeration on our generator. We do have lights and emergency systems on the generator and ventilation. What it does not have is full heating or cooling.
So the question I would have is, the question I want to get answered by the Red Cross in Rhode Island EMA is, does it need to be a diesel generator? Does it need to be natural gas generator? Like what is their standard? What is their recommendation?
It currently is designed, in the original schematic design, it was a gas generator. Gas was piped in off the street, but we're looking to pivot to a diesel generator with a belly tank.
Yeah, they won't allow natural gas for an emergency generator. It's interruptible. It's an interruptible source, where the belly tank, you've got your fuel source right there.
So one of the big questions, and the manager and the chief were extremely helpful on, in addition to Jamie Gorman, was, do we have to meet certain building code standards? And what we got back, because I just want the community to know this, there is no standard. So we don't have to build a ICC 500 storm shelter, right? That's a whole different level of structure. And that's not what Broad Rock is. I don't even know if that's what the current high school is. So to be clear, we meet the Red Cross standard, whatever that is, and we can certainly get more communication from them, but it doesn't necessarily mean we have to beef any of the structure up. A lot of it's just situational windows and to what the town manager said as far as requirements, and we have to get more of that. So that's the good news. And then obviously if other is required, EMA will provide directive with individuals on where they need to go. Probably won't be in South Kingstown if it's that type of event, because we'll all be vulnerable. So, but we wanted to flush it out. We probably will need to the manager's point, and it's good to have the conversation now. I don't want to get accused of later that we didn't look at it, and then it turns out we didn't meet a standard, so.
We do have a list of the current generator load that we'd be happy to set up a meeting to review and see if we need to make any tweaks or modifications.
And just to add some information with working with Red Cross and working with the different groups, and the switch to Broad Rock is, and just for people out there publicly, when you do go into an emergency mode or emergency use of the building, they're designed to use certain sections of the building. They're not going down primary wings into classrooms. So with the layout, with EMS, disaster management, everybody, there's a map that's drawn out of each section of the building, why it will be used and what it'll be used for. During COVID, we had specific plans for COVID. People came in and were sick, and then we have illness rooms. So there's a whole layout to it, but it's not the full building that ends up being used during a disaster.
Anybody else?
So, Brian, does Broad Rock have a heating system that can operate on generator power?
Yes.
It
Yeah,
does?
The boilers, yes,
Okay.
partially it does, not the full building.
And so with our new building, will we have to have, therefore, some kind of auxiliary heating system that will be able to run on generator power so that we have the building heated in the event of an emergency?
There is a certain load for heat, but it's not, I don't believe it's designed to full capacity to go to, what would be comfortable for us. I believe it's really more freeze protection. But we can confirm that with the engineers.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. Next item, discussion update regarding Hazard Field land swap. Luke.
So I just wanted to give an update. It's been a little while. Let everyone know that I've retained a appraiser to appraise the property, Peter Scotti and Associates. So they're actively working on it. Once we have that back, we'll have the numbers to be able to put in the application. The application's partially prepped, waiting on that information. So this is just really to inform the group that it's in process. If anybody asks, we're not sitting on it, but it is a process. So I expect that the appraisal will probably take about 30 days by the time we get the report back, and I'll provide an update at that time.
Any questions for Luke on the land swap? All right. That brings us to item 10, community comment. Go for it.
Because it wasn't on the agenda, so I'll just ask it now. Could you remind me where we are with the PLA? I don't know did we ever finish that study, or did we start the study, or did I fall asleep at the wheel? I can't remember what happened with that. Chris was working on some stuff.
So I was reached out to by the attorney you retained, I think, with Dylan Conley. He had a survey of questions that he asked me as the builder. I replied, provided responses, and his response was thank you.
Okay.
So I assume he's continued to develop it based on my responses to the survey questions he had. I think he may have had some questions for Chris. I'm pretty sure Chris responded with his piece as well, so I suspect it's all back in
So it's
Dylan's
underway.
court.
So it's still
Yes.
moving. All right.
It's
I haven't
moving
heard-
forward. I couldn't tell you
That's fine.
where
I-
Dylan is, but
I just hadn't heard an update for a while, so I
Yeah.
don't know if I missed a meeting or not, but so it sounds like it's just kind of working in the back channel, working forward. That's fine.
I would agree.
Why don't you explain exactly what it is so that people watching know exactly what you're
sorry.
asking about?
So it's a, wow, it's been so long. Yes, language, thank you. I forgot what it's even called anymore. Project labor agreement for, it's a study to determine if the construction be done under project labor agreement, which would be a negotiated contract with the unions so that union trades would be included. It wouldn't exclude non-union trades, but they would have to adhere to the union standards. And with it, you get some concessions from the units, such as a no-strike clause, some fixed pricing and things like that. So there's pros and cons, and it's required on a project usually of this size by the state that we go through an actual study to determine whether or not we want to do one. And then after the study result, if it's recommended that you do one, then you go forward and put the negotiation together. So I keep bringing it up because it's not a quick process, and I don't want this to slow down construction. So that's why I keep bringing it up.
We can just maybe add that as an update to our next, first the OAC meeting and then to the bigger group.
I have another one. I'm just
Go for
full
it.
of community comment. I'm the community member, so I get all the community comment.
There you
right?
go.
We had talked before many times about community subcommittees to look at different things. So I just didn't want to drop the ball on that as we get closer to design development. I think that might be the time to bring in some folks to, not necessarily critique, but to, provide their expertise on the design and do that before we get all the way through design development and get into construction documents. Because once that happens, we don't want to, these guys don't want to hear anything after DD. If we're going to do that, and there are some people that reached out to me that had some interest in looking at the drawings, or I'm sure there's some IT folks that wanted to look at the IT and things like that, which is beyond my scope, but just wanted to not lose that bubble either.
That we can add to our, again, to the OAC meeting, but then bring it to this as a full agenda item to discuss what that might look like. If you guys have experience in other communities with what community subcommittees might, bring to the table, you can speak to it now for a smidge, but to have a more robust discussion, we'll get it on another agenda item.
Yeah, typically what we've done and what we did at the end of this is, user groups like IT, like security, town agencies, we do a drawing review with them. We do a page turn with them to familiarize them with the documents. If there are decisions that need to be made, I think that would be appropriate for a subcommittee, like furniture and technology. Those would be appropriate subcommittees. Exterior design review, those types of things where we're looking to make decisions.
Any other community comments, sir? All right.
One of the projects that I worked on in a previous job, which was building a 48,000 square foot gymnasium, we had a community advisory team that had three people from the community who were experienced in different fields of construction, who were able to meet with members of the building committee from time to time, so the building committee could toss things out to them and say, this is what we're thinking, what do you folks think? And they proved to be really, really valuable in guiding us through the project, thinking of things that people on the school committee or people on the building committee didn't think of. And they were all vested in they were all citizens in the community.
Thank you for that, Bob. Does anybody else have any thoughts? We'll just make sure it's an item on a future agenda so that it doesn't get lost. So with that said, and no other community members in the room, that brings us to our agenda item 11, discussion action, next meeting dates and times. Currently, thank you for that, Luke. Currently, we have our next meeting slotted for February 6th here in the town chambers at 6 o'clock. Does that work for everybody? And will that be a fruitful meeting and that's 2 weeks from now, is that right? Yeah. 2 weeks from now. I just want to make sure, like I said, I don't like having meetings unless we have specific things that we want to discuss. So I'm assuming there'll be something to share on the 6th. Okay, so for now it'll be a TBD. It'll be, we're tentative date, next meeting, February 6th, 6 o'clock here.
And just so you know, I'll be out of town at that time, but I don't think my absence is going to bring anything to a grinding halt.
You sure about that?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Does anybody have any other comments, questions, or concerns regarding our next meeting times? All right. Well, with that said, 6:43, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
You almost made me laugh, Bob, sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Then the meeting adjourned, 6:43.